Hi, my name is Clara, and I thought babysitting for the new neighbors, the Millers, would be easy money. I never expected that one quiet night in their house would turn into a nightmare I couldn't escape. Every shadow seemed to watch me, every whisper followed me, and by the time I realized the baby wasn't alone, it was already too late. I never thought babysitting for the Miller family would be terrifying. The house looked ordinary from the outside: quiet street, neatly trimmed lawn, warm light spilling from the windows, but the moment I stepped inside, a strange heaviness pressed against my chest, like the air itself was thick and unwilling to move. I hung my coat in the hallway and noticed the portraits lining the walls. The living room smelled of baby powder and something faintly metallic, like rust, though I didn't see any water or metal nearby. I tried to distract myself by tidying the room, straightening cushions and folding a blanket left on the sofa, but the house felt wrong. They weren't just shadows. They seemed to stretch and move when I wasn't looking directly at them. I checked my phone. No signal, of course. The Miller family had warned me beforehand, though I hadn't given it much thought. It's just babysitting, I reminded myself. Nothing strange ever happens when you're inside someone else's house. My thumb hovered over the baby monitor on the counter. I pressed it, hearing the soft, comforting coo of the baby from upstairs. But beneath the cooing there was another sound of faint, rhythmic creaking, like someone pacing slowly across the hardwood floor. I froze, listening. The creaking stopped. I shook my head and laughed nervously at myself, convincing myself it was the house settling. I wandered toward the staircase, drawn by some irrational need to make sure everything was okay. The steps groaned under my weight. As I reached the top, I noticed the nursery door slightly ajar. I swore I had closed it when I came in. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. Something about the air in that hallway made my skin crawl. It was colder here than downstairs, and it smelled faintly of damp earth. I pushed the door open and saw the crib, empty. My heart jumped into my throat. The baby monitor had fallen silent. The soft coos had vanished. The room was still, but not peaceful. Still, it was oppressive, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I scanned the room, eyes darting to the changing table, the rocking chair, the toys scattered across the carpet. Nothing. The baby was gone. I backed up slowly, my mind racing. I could hear a faint whisper now, almost too soft to catch, yet it seemed to echo from all around me. I froze, straining to hear it clearly. It wasn't my name, but it sounded close, familiar in a way that made my stomach churn. I glanced at the shadows pooling near the corners of the room. They flickered, stretched, and then one moved. A small dark shape slid across the floor, unnaturally fast, and disappeared behind the dresser. Panic surged through me, but I told myself to stay calm. Maybe the baby had rolled onto the floor or someone was playing a trick, though there was no one else in the house. I grabbed the monitor, shaking, and ran downstairs. The living room looked exactly the same as before, yet everything felt alien, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. The portrait's eyes seemed sharper now, more judgmental, as if they were waiting for me to panic. I pressed my ear to the monitor again. The cooing was gone. In its place I could hear the whispering more clearly. It was a single, deliberate word repeated over and over. I couldn't make out what it was, but it sent shivers down my spine. I tried calling out for the baby, my voice shaking. The silence that answered me felt like it swallowed the sound entirely, leaving only the soft hum of the house. A sudden thud came from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable creak of a door slamming shut. My pulse raced. The baby monitor crackled violently and then went dead, leaving me in a terrifying quiet. I could feel eyes on me. Every instinct screamed to run, but I was rooted to the spot. Something moved in the hallway upstairs, just at the edge of my vision. It wasn't human, not fully, not natural. I wanted to scream, to run out into the street, but my legs wouldn't obey. My throat tightened. I realized the shadows weren't just shadows. They were alive, creeping along the edges of the walls, stretching toward me with a patience that was almost cruel. And then, from the darkness at the top of the stairs, I saw it. A figure, small, hunched, moving impossibly fast. It disappeared before I could focus on it, leaving the hallway empty again. I swallowed hard, trying to force rational thoughts into my panicked mind. But the silence was worse than the movement, the emptiness worse than the figure. And then I noticed the tiny handprints on the nursery floor, small, delicate, yet not belonging to anyone alive. They weren't stationary. Slowly, unnervingly, they started to move, as if something unseen was creeping toward me. I ran to the kitchen, desperate to grab my phone, only to realize it wasn't in my pocket. My heart thudded harder as I checked every counter, every drawer, every corner. It had vanished. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no way to call for help. My chest tightened as the house seemed to shift around me. The walls felt narrower, the air heavier, like the house itself was aware of my fear. The shadows had grown bolder, stretching along the floors and walls, twisting and twitching as if they were waiting for me to make a mistake. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe the baby had wandered off. Maybe the parents were upstairs. Maybe anything rational, anything plausible. But my instincts screamed at me that something was very wrong. A quiet sound drew my attention, the faintest giggle from upstairs. Childlike, innocent sounding at first, but there was a hollow, unnatural quality to it, as though it had no soul behind it. I froze, every muscle in my body stiffening. I thought about running back upstairs, but the staircase looked wrong. The steps seemed to stretch endlessly upward, their edges blurred in the dim light. The hallway at the top shimmered like heat waves on asphalt, and the nursery door was ajar again. Something pulled at me, a morbid curiosity mixed with sheer terror. I wanted to know what was there, but every instinct screamed to turn and flee. The whispering returned. This time, it was louder, clearer. It spoke a word I didn't recognize, yet it sounded familiar, as if my mind had buried it somewhere deep in memory. My ears ached, the sound echoing not just in the room but inside my skull, vibrating like it had found a way in. The shadows shifted toward me, faster now, moving like liquid black ink across the floor. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. Its legs scraped across the hardwood like fingernails. Yet when I looked up, the shadows had already receded, leaving the room empty. I dared a glance toward the stairs. At the bottom step, a figure crouched, small, hunched, almost childlike, but its limbs were too long, too thin, and its head cocked unnaturally to one side. It didn't move, yet I felt its gaze pierce me. My stomach churned, my legs refused to carry me away. My breath caught in my throat. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure was gone, leaving only the lingering echo of its giggle. I forced myself to keep moving, to check the other rooms. Every door I opened revealed nothing, yet each room felt wrong. The furniture seemed subtly shifted, as if the house had rearranged itself in my absence. The lights flickered, casting harsh shadows that twisted like living things. I realized I was sweating, my palms slippery, my fingers trembling. The house was no longer a safe place. It had become a trap. From somewhere above, a soft thud, then another, then a rhythmic scraping like tiny claws against wood. I didn't want to know what it was, but I couldn't look away. My eyes darted to the staircase. The steps groaned under invisible weight. I swallowed hard, trying to convince myself that it was nothing. It couldn't be real, and yet every instinct screamed that it was. A sudden coldness brushed past me, like a gust of wind through a sealed room. The whispering intensified. I could swear now that it wasn't coming from upstairs, it was all around me, inside the walls, inside my own head. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't stop. The voices repeated the same word over and over, louder and sharper, until I felt dizzy, like my mind was fraying at the edges. I ran toward the nursery, desperate to see what was happening. The door creaked open slowly, though I hadn't touched it. Inside, the crib was still empty, but the room was far from calm. Toys littered the floor as if thrown violently, and the rocking chair swayed gently, with no one in it. And then I noticed the handprints. They were everywhere, on the walls, the floor, the windows, as if something small and invisible had crawled through the room, leaving its mark. But the prints weren't still. They moved, creeping slowly toward the crib. A sudden thump behind me made me spin around. The shadows stretched upward, crawling along the walls like black vines. My heart raced and I tripped backward, landing hard against the floor. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, impossibly thin. Its head tilted to one side, its limbs bent in unnatural angles. Its face was obscured by shadow, yet I could feel its eyes boring into me. A chill swept over me as I realized it was smiling, though there was no warmth in it. The baby monitor, forgotten on the counter, crackled to life. A soft, distorted voice whispered a single, horrifying phrase. "She's yours now." My blood ran cold. I bolted for the front door, only to find it gone. The hallway stretched endlessly, the walls pulsating subtly as if alive. The shadows surrounded me, creeping closer with every heartbeat. I realized the house had changed. I was no longer inside a normal home. I was inside a living nightmare. And in the darkness I heard the hollow giggle again, soft and patient, coming from every corner, every wall, every shadow. The baby wasn't missing, the baby was never gone, and I wasn't supposed to leave. I stumbled backward, pressing myself against the wall as the shadows inched closer, twisting and stretching like living smoke. My chest heaved, every breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. The hallway seemed endless now, the doors lining it warped and misshapen. There were grain crawling like veins. Every instinct screamed at me to run, yet my legs felt heavy, as if the house itself had pulled them down. A soft pattering of footsteps echoed from somewhere above me. At first, I thought it might be the baby, but the rhythm was too precise, too deliberate. It wasn't a child. My stomach churned as the sound grew closer, circling me. I could feel it moving in the corners of the room, just out of sight, following me with patience and purpose. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Maybe it was a hallucination, maybe the stress had gotten to me. But then I saw it, reflected in the cracked glass of a picture frame. A figure crouched in the corner, small, thin, with limbs bent at impossible angles. Its head tilted unnaturally, and its ice-dark, empty pit stared straight through me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My voice had fled from me, stolen by fear. The whispers returned, louder this time, curling around my mind like smoke. The word repeated over and over, sharper, sharper, until I felt my skull begin to ache. I tried to cover my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound was inside me now, inside my thoughts, echoing with every heartbeat. I realized then that the shadows were not just outside, they were inside, and they had claimed a part of me. I ran toward the stairs, hoping to escape, but the steps groaned under a weight I couldn't see. The hallway stretched endlessly above me, and the nursery door loomed at the top like a dark maw. I felt drawn to it, compelled by a force I couldn't resist. My trembling hands reached for the doorknob, but before I could touch it, the door slammed open violently on its own. Inside, the nursery was in chaos. The crib rocked back and forth with no one in it. Toys were scattered across the floor, some of them broken, others intact but unnaturally clean. The walls were covered in handprints, small and large, crawling upward as if some invisible child had been climbing them. My eyes widened in terror as I saw that the handprints were moving, slowly, deliberately, toward the crib. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the wall, and then I felt a cold presence brushing against me. It wasn't human, not fully. Its weight pressed against my chest, and I realized with horror that it was holding me in place. I tried to struggle, to push it away, but my limbs refused to obey. I was trapped. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. It was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent in ways they shouldn't. Its face was hidden in darkness, but I could feel its gaze, burning and patient. It tilted its head to the side and smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that made my stomach twist. I wanted to run, to scream, to escape, but the figure didn't move. It just watched, waiting. The baby monitor crackled violently in the corner, and a voice, distorted and low, whispered a single, terrifying phrase. "She's yours now." I didn't understand. What did it mean? The whispers swirled around me, faster now, overlapping with a soft giggle that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. I realized with horror that the baby wasn't missing. The baby had never been in the crib. The baby had always been here. The walls seemed to pulse, closing in around me. The shadows moved faster, twisting into grotesque shapes that stretched toward me. I could see hands forming out of darkness, claws scraping along the walls, reaching for me. My heart raced, pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I tried to scream again, but no sound came. I was completely alone, yet surrounded. Something cold brushed against my ankle. I looked down. A tiny hand, pale and impossibly thin, was gripping me. Its fingers were long and sharp, digging into my skin, holding me in place. I tried to shake it off, but it was stronger than it looked, pulling me closer to the crib. The rocking chair swung violently, as if possessed, and the toys on the floor began to move toward the walls, forming strange, crawling shapes. I realized then that the house wasn't just haunted, it was alive. It was aware of me, of my fear, feeding on it, twisting reality around me. Every shadow, every whisper, every creaking floorboard was part of it, part of something larger and far more terrifying than I could understand. And in the center of it all, the crib waited, empty but alive, a dark promise of something I couldn't see but could feel. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the crib. The shadows followed, stretching and bending, crawling toward me with patience. And then I saw its movement in the corner of the room. A figure crouched there, small, childlike, but wrong. Its head tilted unnaturally, and it smiled at me with eyes that were too black, too empty. I realized with a shiver that it wasn't a child at all. It had been waiting, hiding, watching me the entire time. The giggle came again, louder, closer, echoing inside my skull. My chest tightened as I felt the small hand grip me again. I was trapped, surrounded, alone. The house had claimed me as much as it had claimed the baby or whatever it had been. And then, the whispers repeated, clear as day, over and over, each word cutting into me like a knife. Stay, stay. I stumbled backward, tripping over something soft and landing hard on the floor. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I barely noticed. My eyes were fixed on the crib, empty yet alive with a presence I could feel pressing into my bones. The whispers had grown louder, surrounding me completely, echoing in every corner of the nursery and inside my head. The word repeated over and over, stay, and I felt its weight like gravity, pulling me toward the crib. I scrambled to my feet, desperate to get away. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, the walls shifting as if the house were breathing around me. Each door I passed led to darkness that didn't exist before. Shadows that twisted unnaturally and crept across the floors like living things. My pulse raced, each heartbeat a hammer against my ribs, each breath sharp and ragged. I had to escape, had to get out before it was too late. I ran to the front door, fumbling with the lock. My fingers slipped across the metal, slick with sweat, and my vision blurred. When I finally pulled it open, the world outside was gone. The street, the lawn, even the faint glow of the streetlight had vanished. Instead, I saw darkness stretching endlessly, a void with no horizon, no sound, no escape. The doorframe felt wrong in my hands, warped and cold, as if I were holding onto the edge of a dream. I slammed the door shut and turned, realizing the house had changed. I wasn't inside a normal home anymore. I was inside something alive, something that wanted me. From somewhere above, a soft scratching sound began, slow at first, then faster, circling the room. It wasn't coming from the floorboards, it was coming from the walls themselves. I pressed my back to the nearest wall, shaking, trying to calm myself, but the noise grew louder, more insistent. I could feel vibrations through the floor, tiny tremors that rattled my teeth. The shadows had thickened, pooling into shapes that shifted and twitched, forming grotesque figures that seemed to leer at me from every corner. I thought I saw a figure in the far corner of the room, tall, thin, hunched, its head tilted unnaturally. Its eyes were black voids, and I could feel its gaze boring into me, cutting through my thoughts. I tried to move, but the shadows seemed to press against my limbs, rooting me in place. The baby monitor, forgotten in my panic, crackled to life again. A voice, low and distorted, whispered a single phrase that froze me completely. "She's mine now." I backed away, slipping across the floor as the shadows reached toward me, stretching fingers that ended in points sharper than knives. The handprints on the walls moved too, crawling like insects, leaving trails of black residue in their wake. The room itself seemed to warp and pulse, walls bending, floors tilting, ceilings stretching higher and lower all at once. I had no idea where up was, or down, or if any exit could lead me outside this nightmare. Desperate, I bolted toward the stairs, hoping for some part of the house to remain normal. The staircase creaked under invisible weight, each step threatening to collapse. I could hear giggles from everywhere at once, childlike hollow, echoing off walls that seemed to multiply. I realized with growing horror that the baby had never existed in the crib, that the giggling shadows were not innocent at all. They were something else entirely, something that had been waiting for me to arrive. I reached the attic door, thinking maybe I could hide or find a way out. The door opened on its own, revealing darkness so deep it swallowed the light from the hallway. I stepped inside cautiously, my heart pounding. The attic was empty or appeared empty. Dust motes floated in the air, disturbed by some unseen presence. I could hear faint whispers all around me, circling, mocking, repeating, "Stay, stay forever." And then I saw it. A journal, dusty and old, lying on a crate in the corner. My name was scrawled across the cover in familiar handwriting, but I didn't recognize it. With trembling hands I opened it. The pages detailed every moment I had spent in the house, my thoughts, my fears. Every step I had taken written in past tense, as though someone had already watched everything I was living. My stomach turned. Who or what could know this much about me? Before I could process the journal, the temperature dropped sharply. A cold hand gripped my shoulder, icy and unyielding. I spun around, but no one was there. Shadows moved faster now, reaching across the floor and walls, twisting, crawling, reaching for me. The giggles and whispers surrounded me, louder than ever, pressing against my mind, forcing me toward the attic's far corner. I felt the pull, irresistible, like gravity, dragging me closer to something I could not see, and in the far corner, I sensed the crib, empty, silent, waiting. I realized with a shiver that it had been watching me all along, patient, alive, hungry. I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The house had claimed me as it had claimed the baby or whatever it had been, and I could feel it, everywhere, inside me. The whispers repeated, insistent, echoing through my skull. "Stay forever, stay forever, stay forever." Everything went silent, but it wasn't the kind of silence that brought relief. It pressed against me like a living thing, filling the air and sinking into my bones. My chest tightened as I realized the shadows had retreated only slightly. Not gone, they were waiting, patient, watching. I had no idea where I was anymore. The house had become a labyrinth, hallways twisting and bending impossibly, doors opening into darkness that stretched endlessly. I tried to move forward, but the floor beneath me shifted with every step, like I was walking on the surface of a dark, breathing organism. I ran blindly, tripping over objects that weren't there before. The whispers returned louder, sharper, repeating the same word, "Stay." I tried to scream, but no sound came. The giggles surrounded me, soft and hollow at first, then growing into a chorus that echoed in every corner of my mind. My heart raced, and every instinct told me to run, yet I couldn't see a way out. The house had become a trap, alive and malevolent, and I was its prisoner. I stumbled into the attic again, clutching the journal I had found before. The pages were filled with my name, my fears, and my actions, all written in past tense, like some unseen entity had already observed everything I was experiencing. I skimmed through the entries, each one more detailed and disturbing than the last. The handwriting shifted as I read, sometimes neat, sometimes jagged, and the words seemed to crawl across the pages, forming shapes that twisted into faces with hollow eyes and mouths frozen in silent screams. The temperature dropped sharply, icy fingers brushing against my neck. I spun around, but the attic was empty or appeared to be. Shadows gathered in the corners, stretching and pulsating like living ink. I could feel their hunger, patient and unyielding. My breathing quickened as I realized the baby had never been a baby at all. Whatever had been in this house before me, it had taken its shape, waiting for someone else to arrive. And now it had claimed me as its next observer, its next plaything. I backed into the far corner of the attic and froze. The crib materialized from the shadows, rocking gently even though it was empty. The whispers swelled, pressing inside my mind, relentless. Stay forever, stay forever, stay forever. I understood then that the house had no doors, no windows. It had only the shadows and the voices, and I was now a part of it. My thoughts raced, panic mingling with disbelief. How could a normal house become this? How could the walls breathe and watch and wait? The giggle came again, closer this time, wrapping around me from all directions. A tiny hand, cold and unyielding, gripped mine. I tried to pull away, but it was stronger than it looked, dragging me toward the crib. I stumbled forward, tripping, falling onto the floor, and realized with horror that my reflection in a cracked mirror wasn't mine. It stared back at me with eyes too dark, a mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. It mimicked my movements perfectly, yet it wasn't me. A new whisper slithered into my mind, soft and insistent. She's mine now. My stomach turned. The journal fell from my hands as I saw movement in the shadows, figures crouched and thin, head tilted unnaturally, limbs bent in ways that no human should be able to bend. They surrounded me, patient, silent, watching me, and in the center of them all, the crib waited, empty yet alive, as if it had been alive the whole time, feeding on fear, feeding on me. I realized I had no escape. The house had consumed everything else, the baby, the air, the light, my sanity, and now it had me. My thoughts raced, memories of normal life slipping away as the whispers and shadows pressed closer. The giggles and murmurs filled every corner of my mind, repeating over and over. I couldn't tell what was real and what was illusion anymore. I couldn't tell if I was moving or standing still, awake or trapped in some nightmare that had no end. And then I felt it, faint but unmistakable, the tiniest brush of fingers along my shoulder, the softest giggle in my ear. The house had claimed me, and yet something inside me stirred, the desperate part of me that still wanted to live. But the crib waited, patient. The shadows pressed closer, and the whispers filled my mind, repeating the single, horrifying truth: I would never leave. Somewhere deep in the darkness, faint and barely audible, I heard a new giggle, the sound of something small, hollow, and patient. And I realized with a shiver that it wasn't the baby, or me, or anyone at all. It was the house itself, alive, watching, waiting, and it would never stop.